Welcome back to part two of the commentary track for 1936's Poor Little Rich Girl. We now meet Mr. Peck, which is Mr. Barry's rival in the soap industry. Mr. Peck is played here by Claude Gillingwater, who is a familiar face to those of us Shirley fans. He's one of those characters, a character actor, who often plays gruff, cranky sorts, which he does to perfection in this role. In 2 years' time, 1938, he would play the judge in Little Miss Broadway with Shirley. Didn't have too much to do in that role. And then he'd have quite a substantial role as Uncle Sam in Shirley's film in 1938 called Just Around the Corner. Just around the corner. Foreshadowing? I'm not sure. That character, his assistant's name is Gooch, in case you missed it. Mr. Barry refers to the Gloria Stewart character as Peck's Bad Girl, which is a reference to a book called Peck's Bad Boy, a story which was filmed at one point with child star, probably the first major child star, paving the way for Shirley, called Jackie Coogan. As I said before, Michael Whalen plays Mr. Barry, and Michael Whalen was in Wee Willie Winkie the following year with Shirley, playing the love interest of Shirley's mother in that film. Shirley gives him the nickname Copy, because I guess we're to believe, or we wouldn't know, of course, because of the black and white film, that he had red hair the color of a shiny new copper penny.
Losing money for the past 2 years, you're practically broke. Get out. Get out before I kick you out. Now get out. No, but he doesn't want to sell. Is that your impression, too? Definitely.
You can hear that Mr. Barry did not get the expected response from Mr. Peck.
Boss or no boss? How about the day for lunch?
I couldn't possibly.
Oh, come on, be a sport. You're eating with me, aren't you?
I'm ahead of you. I do like the banter that they have between themselves, making Gloria Stewart's character in this movie just a little sassier than that of hers in Rebecca Sunnybrook Farm. I like this line coming up too.
Say, Bobby, didn't he want about competitors? As far as I'm concerned, he has no competition.
She's falling for him too. All right, we're about to have a near miss. If one of the elevators had been either faster or slower, Mr. Barry would have found his daughter and there would have been no mix-up. But of course, that couldn't happen yet in the film because we still have half of the film to go.
I'm the one in the middle. Miss Allen's busy at the moment. Will you wait in her office?
The Dolans have arrived for their audition and are going to wait in Miss Allen's office, which is the Gloria Stewart character. And we get to see a little bit more of Shirley's, or Barbara / Betsy / Bonnie's character as, well, maybe a bit of a wanderer. She wandered off earlier after Collins disappeared. Now she's nosing about, just as a child would do. when in unfamiliar an unfamiliar environment. What is unusual is that her family, and you can't really blame them because they're not actually her parents and probably have no parenting experience whatsoever. What is kind of unusual, however, is that they don't notice that she's gone.
I'm Bonnie Dolan, big radio guy. Dolan, and aren't we good?
Now Barbara, the character of Barbara Bonnie, comes in to do what the actress Shirley did best in her roles, or at least what was written for her time and time again, where she wins over or melts the heart of the crusty old codger. She does that in film after film. I can think of Uncle Ned in Bright Eyes, and I can't think of any others off the top of my head. Well, I can. Her grandfather in Heidi and her grandfather in Wee Willie Winkie. And if I put my mind to it, I'm sure I can think of quite a few more.
These old rocks, the Betsy Ware stories. Helps Betsy when she's hungry.
Hungry? You're not hungry, are you?
No, I just had lunch. And I did something bad, too.
Yeah. What'd you do?
Well, we had spinach. And while Jimmy wasn't looking, I put mine on his plate.
Doesn't take long for her to win him over.
You should have eaten your
And
spinach.
really, how could it? So once again, spinach is part of the plot. In the very beginning of the film, Shirley is eating spinach and she's not happy about it. Her butler, Stebbins, tells her she must have them because of the vitamins. She mentions putting the spinach on Jimmy's plate here because it's clear that she doesn't like it. However, because Shirley in 1936 was the most popular box office draw in the world, and children all over emulated Shirley and did what she did, if Shirley didn't eat her spinach, well, then the spinach industry would probably experience a decline in sales. And so part of what happens in the film, as we'll see shortly, is that she ends up, after she's declared her distaste for spinach, agreeing to have spinach. And I guess that made the spinach growers and the spinach industry happy, because if Shirley's going to eat her spinach, then the little kids of the world will too. Of course, spinach was the, I guess, the fuel for a popular 1930s cartoon, which children of today don't even know about, but those of us of a certain age do know about Popeye. Popeye would eat his spinach and he would get strong and be able to do whatever was required of the sailor man.
Buy a bar of berries, every grocer carries.
Stop it, I say.
What's the matter?
Where'd you learn that trash?
On the radio. I heard it on the radio.
Radio. There ought to be a law against it. Now, come on. Have a cigarette.
You know how to play piggyback?
Yes,
Now, in a moment, you're going to see that because she's Shirley, she gets her way and does it in as sweet a way as possible. She gets the grouchy old Mr. Peck to play piggyback with her, and you're going to hear her sing a nursery rhyme, Ride a Cock-Horse to Banbury Cross.
Banbury Cross to see a fine lady upon a white horse, rings on her fingers and bells on her toes. She shall have music wherever she goes. Now you run around and around while you're singing.
In the second auction, when Shirley's items from later on in her life, but a few of the earlier ones as well, were auctioned off in November of 2015, a set of sheet music, practice sheet music that Shirley would use at home to learn the songs was offered, and even the short little snippet there, Banbury Cross, was among them. The Banbury Cross song being on the sheet music that Shirley would take home to practice, and so that she was prepared for when filming began. Now, finally, Mr. and Mrs. Dolan have realized that Shirley was not there and have gone looking for her. And everybody runs in from different directions.
As a matter of fact, I made up my mind a long time ago to go on the air.
So not only did
But
Shirley,
she had nothing to do with it,
as
nothing
Bonnie
whatever.
Dolan,
She didn't influence me
win
the
over
slightest. Understand that?
crusty Mr. Peck, she's also, in just that short time, convinced him that he needs to have a radio program, he needs to hire the Dolan Act, and he needs to have Gloria Stewart's character get it on the air tomorrow night. Pretty good work for a short period of time.
13 weeks on the dotted line. Oh, it's wonderful, Jimmy. Holy quick. I will knock him dead.
Do we have to kill people?
No, we won't kill him. We'll just slay him.
All right, so it is the next night when they're performing, and we see that Bonnie Dolan has another new hat and coat set, and we'll find out in a short time that she also has a new dress underneath. I guess they did quite a bit of shopping together as a little family. Neither that coat and hat set nor the dress underneath, which we'll see in a little bit, did make it to auction. In Shirley's contract, or it said that Shirley had a clause in her contract that allowed her to take home her costumes. Wasn't usually the case. When stars would make a film, they would leave their costumes behind, and they would be either reused or recycled or stored. But in Shirley's case, she was allowed to take them home, and probably part of the reason for that is that it would be hard to reuse many of her costumes because they were made for someone so small and so young, and it wasn't as if Fox had a stable of child stars. They did have a few others, primarily Jane Withers, who of course got her start with Shirley in 1934's Bright Eyes.
Federal Broadcasting System. And so it is with great pleasure that I present Dolan and Dolan with Donald Hastings Hawkinson.
So overnight, they were able to write a jingle for the Peck's Soap Company, and Bonnie Dolan, of course, was able to learn it and sing it to perfection. And of course, the orchestra was able to perform it with just one day's rehearsal. That is what you call movie magic.
Yeah. What? I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Just a minute.
Another near miss, because if he hadn't turned down the radio, he would have heard his daughter's voice singing, and he would have discovered where his daughter was at that point in the film. But of course, we're not ready for that to happen.
And give your skin that treat. It's so beautiful, Mr. German, wild and very chaste. Join our club and pick one scrub that's down right off your face. So your eyes are full of bubbles, and to darkness you must grow. Please remember this, where there's life, there's soap.
Where there's life, there's soap is a takeoff on the phrase, where there's life, there's hope.
Listen to a radio program Is that enough? Every street I walk on becomes a lover's lane.
We're treated, the audiences are treated to another luscious song by Alice Faye, her version of When I'm With You. Quite a while ago, I read a biography on Alice Faye. I do like to read up on Shirley's co-stars. And one of the things that it mentioned, and now I'm always sort of on the lookout for it, is that Alice Faye had a much more buxom figure than the typical 1930s film actress. Most of those film actresses were rather flat-chested, not curvaceous, and fit very well into those slinky, diaphanous gowns that many of them wore. Alice had a different physique, and sometimes it was difficult, they said, to dress her, especially in the 30s, because the styles just were not meant for someone with as curvy a figure as Alice. And some of the later scenes, you'll realize, especially at the end of the film, when she's wearing the military man outfit, that she really is quite well endowed. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Here we have an all-time favorite song, "You Gotta Eat Your Spinach, Baby." In one of the early scripts, the song that they sing here, their first performance on the radio, was But Definitely. And for their audition, they were singing this song, the Spinach song. For the film, it ends up the two songs were reversed in order. There's the reference to Popeye. Now, this song would make another appearance later on, 2 years later, in Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm. In that film, Jack Haley is auditioning girl singers for yet another radio program. And two of the girl singers choose "You've Gotta Eat Your Spinach, Baby" as their audition song, sing it very nasally and very poorly, and of course do not get the gig. Shirley, as Rebecca comes on, does not sing that song, although she did sing it here, and of course gets the job.
The nation who sent me to see you about it. I bring a message from the kids of the nation to tell you we can't do without it. Kindly listen to me. I'm not alone in my plea. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of us, nephews and nieces and cousins of us. They want me to say.
I always found that rhyme, "There are dozens and dozens and dozens of us, nephews and nieces and cousins of us," to be rather clever. The songs in Poor Little Rich Girl, and there are quite a few songs, making it one of her most musical musicals, were written by Mack Gordon and Harry Revel. They were composers and lyricists for several of Shirley's films, as well as quite a few films in the 30s and 40s. Mack Gordon was nominated for the Best Original Song Academy Award 9 times in 11 years, and 5 consecutive years between 1940 and 1944. He won the award once for "You'll Never Know," which, as I mentioned earlier, was sung by Alice Faye, who we have here on screen right now in the film Hello, Frisco, Hello.
Sent me to see you about it. Children have to do what they are told.
Mm-hmm.
Children shouldn't be so very bold.
Mm-hmm.
Or you will be a meanie when you're old. So, okay, Spanish.
Gordon and Revell also did the songs for Stowaway, which would be Shirley's last film in 1936. And some of their songs would be included in 1938's Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm. I believe the sailboat that sailed along in Shirley's pool at her Brentwood home was given to her by either Revell and Gordon or both. And the roller coaster, the 100-foot or more roller coaster that graced her backyard in the Brentwood home, was given to her by Mack Gordon as well. There's Billy Gilbert. Billy Gilbert had a small role as the cook in 1935's Curly Top, and also had a small and ultimately deleted role in 1936's Dimples. In Dimples, he played the proprietor of a toy store, where Frank Morgan, as Shirley's character Dimples' grandfather, tries to win her a China head doll. We know that Billy Gilbert played that role because there are stills of it. Billy Gilbert was or is familiar to anyone who's ever seen some of the episodes of the Our Gang, also known as the Little Rascals comedy series. He played the father of the Fidgets, which were two little people masquerading as babies in the episode called Free Eats. He played the very memorable pirate character in Shiver My Timbers, and played an equally threatening character in Dogs is Dogs. So although in the Shirley films he doesn't get to do very much, Billy Gilbert, if you want a good idea of his capabilities, you can watch some of the Our Gang comedies. Here we have yet another dress. This is known to those of us who are Shirley fans and collectors as the emblem dress. Many 1930s ideal composition dolls sported that dress in different color combinations. The original was a yellow with brown trim, and it did appear in the auction in 2015. Now, it's interesting to note what Shirley was wearing just then, that emblem dress, because she and the Dolans are on their way to the performance for tonight, after they were stopped by the nefarious character Flagon, who was attempting to bring her to get some candy. And as I said, going to their performance. But when they arrive at the performance, you'll see that Bonnie Dolan is not wearing the emblem dress. She must have changed into yet another new outfit, which we call the ribbon dress. I'll point that out to you when it appears on screen.
America's new sweetheart of the year, little Bonnie Dolan, in her own version of When I'm With You.
Here it is. We call it the ribbon dress, of course, because you can see a ribbon on it. It doesn't appear on screen for very long, but it is a recognizable dress. Some dolls did come dressed as that in that outfit, but not very many of those outfits must have been made or have been known to survive, because us collectors find them to be extremely rare and quite collectible. That dress has been colorized to be blue here on screen, but in reality was a pale pink color. According to the script, before Shirley as Bonnie was singing When I'm With You on the radio, the three Dolans sang Military Man, which you'll see is now the final number in the film. In the script, it describes the costume worn for the military man as consisting of military pants, gold-braided coats, wavy-plumed military hats. The characters are described as having their cheeks rouged with round dots, and they were all carrying swords. That costume would be changed by the final filming and the final number in this. Interestingly enough, that costume, the one described with the gold-braided coats and the military pants, did come to auction. It was considered an alternate to the costume worn on screen, and the alternate was in Shirley's collection. Perhaps that was the one that was originally conceived for the number when they would look more like toy soldiers. When the idea for the number changed, then they must have retooled their idea for the costume. That little dress and coat that she's wearing there, the same one that she wore to tonight's performance, did not come to auction.
Trying to put something over on me again. The nerve. What else did he say? That's all, except that he was on his way over. Good. I'll tell that cheap upstart just where he gets off. Trying to steal my child, is he? I sue him. I'm here. You get your wife and child and get them out of here. Yes?
Looks like the jig is up.
I know how to handle Barry. Let's get out of here. Don't ask me questions. Where are we going?
Here we have an example of rear projection. Of course, the characters are not actually driving in a car. They're sitting in a car set, and the town or the streets, the city, is projected on a screen, and the film pieces are married together for the final film. It looks now to us as dated and quite noticeable, but it was pretty much considered state of the art when this movie was filmed, and well into probably the 50s and 60s.
Very nice kid you have there. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Taxi! Taxi!
Flagon makes another appearance. He's part of the climax of the movie, as you'll see in a bit.
Oh, you stay here.
I don't want to stay here all alone.
Honey, do us a big favor. Stay right here.
I wonder if they had a two-bedroom apartment, or if she slept on that little couch and there was another room. Just occurred to me now. Foolishly, Mr. and Mrs. Dolan are trying to jump ship and run away and leave Shirley as Barbara for her father to discover her. Of course, they come to regret it and return, which we'll see in a few minutes. And to occupy her while she's waiting, they give her a toy monkey and organ grinder to play with, I guess to remind her of Tony, their neighbor from downstairs. Tony, you'll remember, was played by Henry Armetta. An interesting fact that I found out about Henry Armetta is that he came from Sicily as a stowaway and stowed away aboard a ship that landed in New York. Reminded me of Shirley's role in the 1936 film Stowaway as well.
Yes? What's the number of the house? Yes, what floor? The parlor floor. The first door to your left.
Payphones, something you don't see anymore.
Is he really your daughter? Is that what I've been telling you for the past half hour, you crazy old bugger?
There are a couple of heels running out of a kid like this.
I know, honey, but
Yeah, and a couple of cops as well. They're bound to get us.
I guess you're right. Everybody knows Dolan and Dolan. They know we had the kid, too.
Of course, and if we run away, it'll look worse.
Come on.
They realized the error of their ways and they head back. Alice Faye has a very happy countenance on, a little happier than I think the scene calls for.
I won't tell you. I don't like you.
You better tell.
I won't. You let me
No,
go.
you don't. You're coming with me.
Whenever there's a villain in the Shirley films, she almost always has an intuition about them and doesn't like the character. And that tells the audience or gives audiences another clue as to whether it's a good guy or bad guy. Reminds me of her reaction to the two characters in The Little Colonel, which was made in 1935, when Shirley decides that she doesn't like them, and it tells the audience that ultimately they will be swindlers, and if only her father had listened to her in the first place. I've watched this scene closely, and it doesn't look like there was a stunt double for Jack Haley or the Flagon character.
Who brought you here? Where's Collins? What happened to her?
I'd go on a vacation. I found
That's the only mention of Collins in the film. They don't seem too concerned about her. As far as we know, Shirley, Barbara, never does mention her again.
She told us she ran away from an orphan asylum. What do we mean to her? And we believed her. Didn't you tell us that, Bonnie?
Yes, I did. I wasn't telling a lie. I was just playing a game. Play with me. I've never had so much fun in my whole life. But I'm glad to be back with you, Daddy.
And although Shirley is happy to see her father here at the end of the film, it's rather funny that she wasn't, or didn't seem to have missed him while she was on her vacation. I guess she was taking the idea of becoming a whole new person very, very seriously.
I'm with him now.
I don't know what that means. Why don't you do it?
And here we have the final number, called Military Man. As I was saying before, this costume was a different vision or a different version of the one that was described in the script, and different from the one that Shirley retained in her own collection. The original of Shirley's costume, which you can see is a simpler version than the one described. It doesn't have the gold epaulets on the top. Is red with white trim. We know that because although it did not come to auction with Shirley's items, it did come to auction by Bonhams and came from the Debbie Reynolds collection and offered for sale by Heritage in 2009. One of the very few costumes that escaped Gertrude's collection and ended up in the hands of someone else. Debbie Reynolds, of course, was known for really pioneering the saving of film costumes and movie memorabilia, all in hopes of starting her own film museum, which, although she did try several times, was unable to successfully do that. Ultimately, she ended up selling off her enormous collection not too long before Debbie herself died. Now, even though this is radio, most of this number is a dance number, so the radio listeners at home are just listening to the taps. But we, the film audiences, are treated to the whole thing. This is one of Shirley's most intricate dance numbers, not only because of the complex steps that are involved, but because she has to be in time with two other people, and there are quite a few long shots. This is all one shot, and so they did not cut away after possibly a mistake or a refilming had to be done. Still the same shot. Still the same shot. Rapid fire. All right, then they cut away to a second shot. Earlier we talked about Alice Faye's figure. You can really see it's accentuated in this military costume. There were interviews done with Jack Haley regarding this film, particularly this number, where he discusses the tapping and said that Shirley had difficulty with the taps, not the execution, because we see that's intact here on the screen, but I guess according to Jack Haley, she was unable to match the clear taps that he and Alice were able to do. Again, this is his story. And he claims that he and Alice had to go back to the studio to re-record the steps, and Shirley's had to be dubbed in. Perhaps that's true, although sometimes in his later years, Jack Haley could be a little bit of a sour grape. But regardless, even if her taps weren't that loud, she absolutely matches them in terms of footwork. Probably best represented in that number, her stellar ability. And just like all of Shirley's films, there's a happy ending. Thank you for sticking with me for our second commentary. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and you didn't mind me talking a blue streak. I will see you the next time. Bye-bye.